Holla ballers, it's Preacher, and we're looking at the Shadow Priest and Warlords of Draenor. My God, this thing is different. Woo, some relearning had to go on here to play around with this thing, but is it fun? Sure, if you're into that classic dot style, it definitely pays its dues, and it does do that. It's rare. It is rare to get that classic dot style anymore. A lot of classes are that way simplified, but not the Shadow Priest. But they did do something to simplify it, which made it, like, really different. So, yeah, we have a lot to cover today. So, hopefully I can explain it to you if you're thinking about going Shadow because you're a healer and your guild needs some deeps. Or you're thinking, you know what, I missed some classic style of play. Any of those reasons, or perhaps you just have a priest alt. So, we'll explain dot weaving, clarity of power, auspicious spirits, all this kind of stuff. You've probably heard these terms flying around about different styles of play. Certain talents dog shit. What I have found in a lot of the research I've done and playing around is that if you were to read a guide, it would probably tell you certain things are terrible, stay away from it, blah, blah, blah. But it's not always true. It's not. So we'll talk about that as well today. So the basic idea of the Shadow Priest is you have all these very, very cool things. Well, coolly named, I should say. Shadow of Pain, Shadow Form, Mind Blast, Devouring Plague, Vampiric Touch, Mind Flay. Very cool names. Very cool names indeed. And making them work for you. Now, having said that, this is just ridiculous. Because what it doesn't mention is the most important thing in the universe, which is Shadow Orbs. Shadow Orbs, created by your Mind Blast, generates Shadow Orbs. Shadow Orbs are more important than anything in the universe. Universally agreed that you should stop doing anything that you're currently doing if you can generate a Shadow Orb. Yeah? Now, it doesn't matter what you think you should do. If you can make a Shadow Orb, make a Shadow Orb. And don't waste them. You can have up to 5. You spend them on Devouring Plague. Yeah? Don't waste them. If you have 5 Shadow Orbs and your Mind Blast off cooldown, Devouring Plague first, then make a Shadow Orb. Don't waste Shadow Orbs. Make as many Shadow Orbs as possible. And you're in for a generally good time. Very hard to fuck this spec up if you just look after your Shadow Orbs. Seriously. Doesn't matter what your talent setup is and all that nonsense. If you look after your Shadow Orbs, you're going to be in good shape. You're going to be in good shape. So, excuse me. Let's talk about the basics. General talents, Desperate Prayer is pretty much the go-to. You don't really have much of a choice because it's an instant cast. I will say Shadow Priests don't have great damage reduction. Now, before you all slap me in the face because Shadow Form carries some armor, lol, and, of course, Dispersion. Things you've got to remember are Dispersion makes you into a beautiful cloud, but you can't really do DPS. See? So, Dispersion might be all very well and good. So, Desperate Prayer is all really nice. You can, of course, glyph your Fade, which is what I do, which gives you a 10% damage reduction when you use Fade. Very nice indeed. Now, what else do we have? Angelic Feather, pretty much a must-have if you're a DPS Shadow Priest. Why? Because you're likely to have a Disc Priest in the group, and if you start giving yourself Weakened Soul, and the Disc Priest notices, he's probably going to slap you in the face. So, Angelic Feathers all the time. A lot of people seem to think, I hate Angelic Feathers. I don't hate Angelic Feathers. I prefer Body and Soul, but ultimately, you can't really be giving yourself Weakened Soul while you're a DPSer. That would be a bad idea. So, get your Angelic Feathers and get used to using them. Level 45. Now, this is where one of those things crops up where it's like, you must take Insanity all the time, otherwise you're a big, big noob. No, not true. Insanity is the one you'll take in, like, nearly all cases. There's no doubt about that whatsoever. Insanity, which is a buff. Something to note that this is a buff. So if I go ahead and create some Shadow Orbs in the next few seconds, you'll notice that when I use Devouring Plague, yeah, you gain the buff of Insanity, which transforms not only your Mind Flay, but your Mind Seer. So if I use Devouring Plague, you can see I gain the buff. So if I click a different target, I still do Mind Flay Insanity, or Insanity as it's called now. So bear in mind that that is a buff on yourself. Not always relevant, as you'll probably be DPSing the same target, but it's worth noting that it is a buff on yourself and you can change targets, okay? Mindbender can get a look in, honestly. If you you need to judge this based on how much can you actually Mind Flay. Right? Real simple idea. What does Insanity do? It changes your Mind Flay, which is what you'll be using for most of the time. How often do you get to Mind Flay? If you're dotting all the time, yeah? If you're dotting all the time, it's unlikely you'll get to use a lot of Mind Flay. You really won't. Your dots as a Shadow Priest don't last very long. Yeah? It's 15 seconds. 15 seconds and 18 seconds. It's almost annoying how quickly you have to refresh dots as a Shadow Priest while you're multi-dotting. So yeah, bear in mind, if that is the case, and you don't get to Mind Flay a lot, Insanity's not going to be great for you. Simple as that. Mindbender As long as you're not having to move a lot, Mindbender will be a better choice for you, okay? So, off the top of my head, things like Blast Furnace, you'll be doing lots and lots of multi-dotting there, and not many Mind Flays, so Mindbender's probably better because you're not moving a lot. Surge of Darkness, depending on where you go, Surge of Darkness will be like, oh, it's dog shit, don't ever use it. If you're moving every few seconds, and as you move up into Mythic, guys, casters, you're moving a lot, a hell of a lot. Surge of Darkness can pay off because it's something you can do on the move. So you'll really have to weigh up your decision-making process here of what exactly is going to be better. The obviously trade-off with Surge of Darkness is it's weaker than Mindbender, but you don't have that many instant cast spells, especially if you're playing with Clarity of Power, which we'll play with soon enough. So if your only instant cast is like Mind Blast and Halo or whatever, and you're moving every few seconds, that doesn't really work. And therefore, Surge of Darkness can pay off in spades in that scenario. Level 60, do whatever you want. Level 75, I totally agree with everything I've found on this. Is Twist of Fate is your only choice. Multiple occasions are things below 35% health in Warlords of Draenor, and that is a buff that is up just all the fucking time, okay? What this thing does is it gives you 15% extra damage when you damage something that is below 35% health. So look for those opportunities, guys. The only way Twist of Fate doesn't pay off it big time is if you ignore things that are about to die. Simple as that. Level 90. Cascade or Halo is pretty much your choice. Halo, nearly all the time. Yeah, nearly all the time. But bear in mind that Halo single target, not really. Halo while moving, good stuff. Good stuff, okay? Really good stuff. Cascade is when the ads are all spread out all over the place. Very rare that occasion actually pops up. Most of the time it'll be Halo. But do bear in mind, in a scenario where you're going to not be able to cast, or you're moving, something like that, then you throw out a Halo. Okay? Unless you're actually AoE. Level 100. This is where it gets funny. So, with a Shadow Priest, you're going to have to learn two basic styles of play. What I will mention here is in Blackrock Foundry, as you get way, way more gear and up to about 25% crit, the single target difference between Clarity of Power and Auspicious Spirits actually starts to blur, and you can get equally or if not better DPS with Auspicious Spirits. However, until then, Clarity of Power is your best single target DPS spec. And I say spec because it changes how you play entirely. You no longer dot. This is called the dotless spec, yeah? Your Mind Spike, Mind Sear, and Shadow Word Death deal 40% additional damage to targets that have no dots on them. Very important. Also reduces the cooldown of Mind Blast by 3 seconds and makes it instant cast. So, this is the dotless style of play. Kind of. What I'm going to do now is explain to you dot weaving in a simple manner. Dot weaving can get tricky if you read too much into it. But explain it to you what it basically is, I think you'll be fine. Now, but tier bonuses and different stats when you get to Mega Haste and all that can affect little bits of it. But the general idea is this. You want to create a scenario where you're not mind spiking for an extended period of time. And that is basically it. Devouring Plague. Okay, so let's show you why we do this. If I create my Shadow Orbs and generate a Devouring Plague, which is our finisher for all intents and purposes with our 3 Shadow Orbs, and I'm playing Clarity of Power, which involves a lot of mind spiking, what you'll see is if I Devouring Plague and then I derp mind spike, it removes my Devouring Plague. That also goofs around with like insanity and stuff. So you don't want to do that. What you actually want to do is create a period of time where you're not mind spiking. So what they say is, look, we can have 5 Shadow Orbs. Which means that if we time it right, we can actually do 2 back-to-back Devouring Plagues. That's a long time where we can actually do Insanity Mind Flays. So why not slap some dots on top of that? Because we're not going to be mind spiking them off. So what you do, with a very basic idea of dot weaving, as it's called. This isn't difficult. It's one of those things that people claim is like, oh, I've mastered dot weaving. It's like, dude, really? All you do is this. You basically, right, after all that nonsense you just heard, you basically cap your Shadow Orbs, and you'll be mind spiking in between, but we'll talk about rotation soon. You cap your Shadow Orbs, and then you go, okay, I'm about to cast Devouring Plague. So you cast Devouring Plague, you obviously Mind Blast to keep looking after your orbs, and then you go Insanity. Yeah? Use your Insanity until you can Mind Blast again. Mind Blast, Devouring Plague, Insanity again. Until this next Mind Blast. And then when you do that and you cast the Mind Spike, look, your dots naturally fall off. That's it! You literally get yourself 5 Shadow Orbs, wait until Mind Blast is about to come back, dot the target, Devouring Plague it to spend 3, then Mind Blast so you generate an extra orb, and you just fill it with Insanity. That's all dot weaving is. It's really not hard. It's incredibly simple. Now, you will have alterations to that based on things like haste and set bonuses and so on, but that is the general idea. And if you understand the general idea, it's really not difficult to manage. Auspicious Spirits is much easier to explain. It just changes your shadowy apparitions to create shadow orbs for you, essentially. Now, how do the shadow apparitions appear? Critical strikes from Shadow Word Pain, which means that critical strike rating is our best stat. Hey! When your Shadow Word Pain damage over time critically strikes, you generate a shadowy apparition. Now, this means that Shadow Word Pain is obviously very important to that spec. So, that's your general talent layouts. Now, I'm going to do some gameplay stuff in a moment. Glyphs. I love the Glyph of Fade. Reduce all damage taken by 10%. Glyph of Reflective Shield. Occasional deeps that you'll pass out. Very nice. And Glyph of Vampiric Embrace. Not many people like Vampiric Embrace, but if you are going to do it, you might as well get the biggest bang for your buck for it. My personal favourite, though, is Glyph of Fade, which is reduces all damage by 10%. Very, very nice. It really is nice. So, what I'm going to show you now is generally the Clarity of Power playstyle. Clarity of Power, okay? So if you're not sure, again, Clarity of Power, this is the dotless style. So basically it works like this. You have this instant cast, and you're just casting Mind Spike in between. Now, depending on your gear levels, that'll be 2 or 3. And all we're doing is we are going to do the dot weaving style, because we should, is get to 5. And then this usually means 1 Mind Spike, Vampiric Touch, Devouring Plague on, Mind Blast, Insanity. Okay? And we're just Insanitying until Mind Blast, there we go, you can just see it coming back, and another Devouring Plague until the next one. There's another Mind Blast, and then we can go ahead and Mind Spike it, and we literally risked 1 second off our Shadow Word Pain. Big boo fucking who. And then we just repeat. It's really as simple as that. It's an actual very, very, very basic spec. It really is. And there's a basic rotation. There's nothing more to it than this. It's just look after your Shadow Orbs, you'll be in good shape, blah, 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 blah. Yeah? Nothing to worry about at all. It's really that simple. Now, what do we note here? The Insanity buff. So you'll notice that I'm actually recasting Insanity before the channel runs out. This is very, very important when you're dealing with Insanity. If you have Insanity, you really want to maximize the amount of time you can do it. That's the whole point of dot weaving. We want to use Insanity for as long as possible. That's why we do it. So in order to do that, we actually want to cast it, recast it. You can see the tick lines. Now, you might not be able to see them just YouTube's downsampling, but if you have an advanced cast bar like Quartz, it will show lines across your cast bar. And these are actually the point where this spell actually deals damage. It obviously doesn't do it all at once. You can see this here. It's like 5 hits and so on. These are all these tick points. So what you do is before your Insanity buff runs out and before Mind Blast is back off cooldown, it's a good idea to watch the ticks and then refresh it before it reaches that tick. As soon as the spell ticks, you want to refresh it, and that will mean you get longer with Insanity than you should have. Because if you have the buff of Insanity on, you can actually keep casting Insanity after the buff is worn out, as long as you don't cast it again. So if we show it here, I've got the Insanity buff now, and I'm casting. Now it's about to run out. You see that? So if I click it again, look, my buff runs out, but I'm still casting Insanity. You get this longer duration of casting Insanity. So that's why we do the dot weaving. That's why it all works together. Very, very easy. Very, very simple. Now, let's switch over to Auspicious Spirits. This is if you're going to be cleaving or AoEing, you don't bother with Clarity of Power. Clarity of Power is pretty much a straight-up single target spec. Auspicious Spirits. Now, some people like to track their spirits and how many are coming in. I don't like that. I like the way I track my Shadow Orb, so it's no big deal. If you are playing with Auspicious Spirits, you still look after your fucking Shadow Orbs like they're your parents. You need to take care of them, okay? They'll go crazy and senile otherwise, and it's just a whole big waste. You'll be written out of the will. All that stuff is going down. But this time, we are actually going to dot. So we'll do things like Mind Blast on cooldown. Now, Shadow Word Pain is obviously way more important than Vampiric Touch. Bear that in mind. Way, way more important. But you'll be tracking your dots. So keep good mods to do this. Now, this is something I mentioned that I can't show. It's super important if you play a dot spec that you have good boss raid frames. These are on the standard Blizzard UI where it shows the boss and any of the important ads on the side. Very, very crucial that you have that set up to be able to see your dots on those targets. I cannot express it enough. They usually appear on the right-hand side. We'll go into a boss fight in the gameplay video that shows those. But if you are going to be multi-dotting, it's crucial that you have them. for a good way to track them, especially if the ads are spread out. It's all good having an add-on like mine where I can see them above the target. That's fine. But what if the ad is over here? I can't position myself in such a way. And if you're doing multi-dotting, loads of multi-dotting, you need to be able to track them effectively. So get a good boss raid frame for your Shadow Priest. It's really important. Now, what about some finer points? What about Devouring Plague? So obviously we got our dots on. We want to maximize. Let me dump these out of the way. Let me get rid of these. Ignore these. What we want to do again is maximize our insanity uptime. And we're going to do the same thing that we do when we play Clarity of Power. The general best way to do this is straight after you cast a Mind Blast. Okay, straight after you cast a Mind Blast gives you that nice window of 8 seconds to channel Mind Flay Insanity. So we'll have dots on like this. And we'll go Mind Blast and we'll be like, oh good. Devouring Plague on. Insanity. Now look, we're watching the Insanity buff. We're waiting for it to run out. Boom. Insanity buff gone. Look how much extra Insanity I have. All the way to the next Mind Blast. So crucially important that you do that. Because you will get way more ticks of Insanity. You're not losing Shadow Orbs. Okay? You're not losing Shadow Orbs in the meantime. Really nice. In normal filler, you're just casting Mind Flay as normal, keeping dots on, and trying to get as many orbs as possible. So I've got Devouring Plague coming after this one. Devouring Plague on. Insanity. Yeah? And you keep refreshing it. Insanity's about to run off. I can recast it. Look, no buff. Still casting Insanity right until the next Mind Blast. Really as simple as that, guys. Remember Shadow Fiend, nice big DPS cooldown. Doesn't return mana or anything like that. Not that you need it as Shadow, but it's a big DPS cooldown to be using. Again, Halo used to either cleave if you're doing some AoE, or if you have to move or something like that. As you only have like Shadow Word Pain as an instant cast or Devouring Plague as a Auspicious Spirits Priest or AS. So that's something to bear in mind as well. So that was a lot of information, guys. So we're going to jump into some gameplay where we'll be playing both of these specs, and you can see this over the course of a raid fight. All right, guys. Thank you so much for listening. Enjoy Shadow Priest. I'll see you again. Bye-bye.